What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the Fumble. I'm your host, Jackie Ray. Thank you so much for joining us. Make sure you hit that subscribe button and most importantly, that notification bell so you don't miss out on any of our daily content or when we have an amazing guest like I have today. I am so pleased to introduce you to Miss Carol Rodriguez. She's a former Olympian. She competed in the 2008 and 2012 Olympics, and the last time she competed professionally was in 2016, and she's currently a radio host of the Sports and Run and Then Some on Dash Radio. Please join me in welcoming Miss Carol Rodriguez to the show. Hey, Carol, how you doing?
Hi, I'm doing well. How are you?
Thanks. I'm doing great. You look amazing.
Thank you.
It's so great to see you and so good to have you on the show because I think you're going to give us a perspective about something that we've talked a lot about on this show, and that is the Olympics, because we've seen so much going on with the Olympics and a lot of mindsets as far as mental health. But before we get into that, you know all of the pressures that go into just preparing for the Olympics. Can you tell me about some of that pressure just to get ready for that big day?
Wow, yes. So basically, there's a lot of pressure going into it. You basically spend, years training for the Olympics. People think, maybe it's 1 year, 2 years, but it's actually pretty much your whole life. It's something that you dreamed about when you were a kid. So you have a lot of pressure on you. And just getting ready for that big day, you're pretty much dedicating your entire life. You're eating, you're sleeping, you're training, everything, your social life. Like when I was training for the Olympics, my social life kind of went down just because, you have to be focused. You can't go out and do things you would normally do when you're not training. So, yeah, there's a lot of pressure involved for sure.
There's so many reporters that cover you during that time when you are preparing, and then of course on that big day. But there seems to be a disconnect between the reporters and people who watch the sport and those who compete in the sport. What do you think that disconnect is, and how can we fix that?
I think honestly there needs to be more. So for instance, like there's reporters who are just normal reporters and there's reporters who are actually reporters who follow the sport. And me being a track and field athlete, I will say there's a lot of reporters who don't really follow track and field that much, especially here in the US, just because I feel like track isn't the most dominant sport here. You're kind of like overshadowed by football and basketball and Major League Baseball. So I think there just needs to be more specific reporters who follow the sport, who actually may have competed in the sport in the past or actually understand the sport, because that definitely makes a difference versus dealing or talking to a reporter who doesn't really know too much about the sport. So the questions and everything get kind of a little bit funny.
For sure, you can definitely tell the difference. We talk about that all the time on this show, for sure. But how can the media still has a job to do? Obviously, they want that big soundbite. How can they look for that soundbite, ask questions that are going to get them that soundbite, but at the same time empathize with the position that athletes are in? How can they create that balance?
Wow, I don't know. I would possibly say the best thing would be to just kind of try to look at it from the perspective of the athlete and just try to be understanding. I understand they want to get the best soundbite, they want to get the best, what I guess the most watchable thing that people are going to be, viewers are going to be gravitated to, but they have to take in consideration that the athlete is here like lying it all out on the line, so they need to I would say they need to really research the sport before they start doing interviews on the sport. I feel like a lot of people will research or not research. They'll talk to a person they're interviewing or they're interviewing somebody in a specific sport and not really know what to ask or not really know anything about that person or what they do or what the sport is. So I think that makes a difference, like doing the due diligence and doing the research.
So being in that pressure and understanding that pressure and all that goes into preparing for the Olympics, and then seeing young ladies like Naomi, Osaka, and Simone Biles take that step back and say, you know what, I need to take this mental break. How did you feel when you saw them do that? And did you think that they were going to get any kind of immediate flashback for that?
I applauded them for doing that because, while you're at the Olympics, there's so many pressures. You just want to be able to compete and do your best. You want to be able to win a medal, win a gold medal. You want to be able to have fun. You have the entire country kind of like riding you. Like they're looking out. They want you to do the best you can. And when they took a step back, I would say, from my perspective, I applauded them. As far as them receiving backlash, I know how tough critics can be. I know how some fans can be, and I feel like they might have. I felt like they were going to receive backlash just because it's almost like when you're an athlete, people kind of forget that you're a human being first. You have emotions, and just like physical health, mental health is actually even more important because when you go and compete at this elite level, your mental health needs to be number one because you can literally have like something going on mentally and it will take you right out of your event. It will take you right out of your competition. So I think what they did was great. And I think that the backlash they did receive, I just kind of feel like the backlash probably came because we don't really focus on mental health as a society. We kind of like glaze over it, look over it, we really don't focus on it. And I think there needs to be more awareness about mental health. And so with them doing that, I think they created a conversation that needed to be had anyway.
Yeah, no, I agree. And that kind of takes me to my next question. So Naomi is 23, Simone is 24. These are two young women that are in the spotlight. They're under a microscope. Do you think that this is a good lesson that their sports are in good hands because they were brave enough to take these steps? And do you think young people are going to look up to them for doing that?
Absolutely. I think it was definitely a good lesson just because now it opened up the door to have the conversation about mental health, and like I said, it was kind of like, I don't want to say taboo back when I was competing, but people really didn't talk about mental health. And now that, I feel like with social media and everything that's happening, the world's gotten smaller and now people can kind of see like, them taking a step back. You have the younger athletes who are going to be coming into the sport in the next 4 years and the next 4 years. And now they see like, okay, I need to take care of my mental health. This is important, for me to be able to compete at this elite level. And then being so young, you need to be able to take and really take care of your mental health because it definitely makes a difference in competition. Absolutely.
For sure. And it's interesting because when I think of mental health and I think, okay, I'm taking a step back, that means to me, I don't need to explain myself to anyone. I'm in a situation and I'm going to take care of myself first. Simone Biles took a very different approach. She not only explained why she took that step back up until a week ago, she was still explaining what that meant. Do you think that she owed it to us to explain that situation? And does that bring more awareness to mental health by explaining it?
I think, I feel like I don't think she owed us an explanation just because sometimes when you're going through things mentally, you just have to take a step back. And sometimes even explaining something can actually be hard on your mental health because you're dealing with something in that moment. So, I don't think she owed us. I felt that she didn't owe us an explanation. When she said she didn't take a step back due to her mental health, I understood right away. I just, I give that person that space. But I do think because she did explain and she did talk about it and she was very open about it, it definitely help raise the awareness of mental health because it got everybody chattering about it, online, offline, on television. So her doing that, it actually brought, like I said, more awareness to it. So I think it was good that she did do that going into the future.
Yeah, no, I definitely appreciate that. And I heard you say something a second ago that you said, back when you were competing, mental health wasn't really a thing. We weren't really talking about it. And I know you took a step back for your mental health as well. What was going on with you that made you decide to do that?
Well, I just had a lot going on, for me, I had a lot of like personal issues. My stepdad was really, really sick at the moment. He was diabetic on dialysis. My parents had like lost their house. It was a lot
Mm.
going on. So I had so much happening and trying to like hold everything together, but then trying to like compete at this high level. And I never even talked about what happened. This is probably like the first time I even mentioned it in like anything. So
Mhm.
besides like family and friends, but yeah, it was a lot to deal with because you just never know what someone's going through. Just because like we as athletes appear like strong, we appear like in control and we appear like very disciplined. There's so many things on the back end that we go through and we try to block it out and try to just focus on what's ahead of us and focus on the goal and focus on winning and being the best you could be at your sport. So for me, it was like I was dealing with a lot of family issues, personal issues, and it definitely affected my mental health like a lot. So yeah.
So you mentioned you never told anyone about what you were going through until this moment. So what did you say when you said I needed to take this step back? And did anyone try to stop you?
At the moment when I said it, I just told him like I need to take a step back. I have a lot going on. People were no one really tried to stop me. They just were really kind of questioning like why, what's going on, what's happening, and it's weird because I'm in the spotlight. When I was competing, I was in the spotlight. Everything I did was under a microscope. But then I'm a very private person as well, especially when it comes to like family and personal issues. So I really had a hard time like trying to explain why I was taking a step back. But luckily the people that I was around, they just kind of said, okay, well, they seen how hard I work and they seen how much effort and drive I put in stuff and being an athlete. But when I said I had to take a step back, they knew it was serious, like something was going on. So they kind of respected my personal space, which I liked.
Was that the biggest step you had to take as far as protecting your mental health, or have you taken another step since then that you really said, okay, no, I have to protect my mental health, even if it means, changing the trajectory a little bit?
I think I honestly, in this today's society with everything happening, I feel like I do a lot of mental health checks at least like a few times a month just because there's so much happening, like there's so many things. I feel like the atmosphere, the vibrations in the world are just crazy at the moment, with everything happening. I just feel like you always kind of got to keep your mental health in check because sometimes you can find yourself like feeling like sad, you don't know why, or just there's so many different things happening like emotion wise and just things in the atmosphere in the world and social media sometimes like that can get to you. So you kind of like there's moments where I take a step back from social media, like okay, let me just not get on social media for a few days or yeah, I feel like mental health is a big deal and sometimes you can kind of like put your own mental health on the back burner and forget about it and you don't even realize you're slipping into like maybe a state of depression or maybe a state of anxiety or maybe whatever it is. So I think it's important to check your mental health at least a few times a month. I definitely do. I definitely do for sure.
So I do want to change gears really quickly and get to your foundation. You started a foundation called X Track Star versus Track Star, which is to bring former and current track stars together to address some of the issues within the sport. What was the birthplace? Where did you get this idea to start this foundation?
So for me, while I was competing, one of the questions that I always got asked when I would be out or just out and about, people would ask like, so you ran track? Like, what was your event? And I used to run track, and I didn't realize how many people ran track. So many people ran track. So many people competed in high school, college. People competed all the time. So for me, it was kind of like I kind of thought about it like in a sense, okay, at the time when I was getting asked these questions, I was a track star, I was a competing athlete. And for me, I thought it was important for me to merge the X track stars and the track stars together because when I would listen to people who told me about when they used to compete, I used to watch their face light up, seeing how much they enjoyed the sport and going into like their memories of when they ran and how much track like helped them with like their being disciplined and just so many different stories. And they just kind of go off in a tangent of just like talking about how much fun they had when they competed. So for me, I got the idea from that moment and just bringing it together and saying, um, track, I feel like is a really big sport, the Olympics, but on a regular like basis, you don't get that much coverage in track and field. So I felt like, bringing former track athletes and current track athletes together to kind of pay homage to the sport was something that should have been done a while ago, I guess. But
Mm-hmm.
yeah, I feel like let's start now.
So do you guys kind of get together and then these X track stars? Because that's one of the things. I met a young lady named Rachel McCoy. She just went to her first Olympics and she said she had no idea what to expect. I feel like she could have really benefited from your foundation. Is that what you guys do? Kind of just mentor and give the advice that no one's ever had? And then do you help them? I think one of the biggest things for athletes too sometimes is realizing, okay, it's time to transition out of this sport. And
Yes.
then what do I do after?
So yes, that's the main thing. So track star is when you're an athlete, you're currently competing in the sport. Ex track star is former. So it's transitioning into the next thing. And that's the main thing I would say. It's a little bit scary for athletes in general to look at themselves and see themselves in a different career path or a different I guess light, because they've been identified, or we've identified as athletes for so long, so I think for my foundation, it's really important to help transition athletes into the next chapter of life. That's what X track star is. So it's kind of like you're still a track star. You're always like, once you're Olympian, always Olympian. Once you're a track star, you're always a track star. So, but it's about taking that step into life and transitioning into the next phase of life, but then also keeping that same mentality that you use to compete, the same discipline that you use to train every day, and apply it to the next chapter in life. So you can pretty much, blossom the same way, but just in a different light.
No, I think that's fantastic. You just covered everything, because I think sometimes that does lead people to depression when they are making that transition. So that's fantastic. Thank you so much. Is there anything you'd like to add before we wrap up?
Well, no, I would like to say thank you for having me. I had a great time talking and being able to, share my ideas and thoughts with you guys on mental health and with the Olympics. And yeah, thank you for having me.
Yes. Before we go, I have one personal question. I know you have New Orleans roots. Are you part of Who Dat Nation? That's all I want to know.
Yeah. You said
yes.
What? I can hear.
Are you part of Who Dat Nation? Are you a New Orleans
am. Yes, I am. My mom is from Portland, so yes, I am.
All right. I knew it. I felt it in my spirit, so I just had to ask it. Thank you, Carol, so much for joining us here on The Fumble. I can't wait to see all that you're doing with your foundation, and we really appreciate you bringing awareness to mental health as well.
Thank you so much.
All right, you guys, don't forget to subscribe, give this video a thumbs up, share, and like Carol said, make sure you do monthly mental check-ins. They're very important. I'm Jackie Ray. We'll see you next time right here on The Fumble.